From The Guardian, we are working class women of color, the Longshot socialists running for the White House. Claudia de la Cruz of the Party for Socialism and Liberation plans to seize control of the top 100 U.S. corporations and disband the CIA, but recognizes it will take a movement to overthrow capitalism. It's January 20th, 2025, the day of the presidential inauguration. After taking the oath of office, the new president, a 44-year-old woman born in the Bronx to Dominican parents, takes her seat in the office and gets to work. In one of her first acts of Claudia de la Cruz's presidency, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk watch on as the government seizes control of Amazon and Tesla, along with all of the top 100 corporations in the U.S. And that's just the start. De la Cruz, America's first socialist president, goes on to abolish the Senate and the Supreme Court. There isn't a specific plan as to how, as well as disbanding the FBI and the CIA and reining in the military. The Party for Socialism and Liberation, which sees a socialist U.S. as part of a step towards the creation of a communist world, won about 85,000 votes in the 2020 presidential election. That's more than Kanye West. De la Cruz, the party's presidential candidate, is optimistic about this moment in American politics, even if she is realistic about what she and her running mate, Karina Garcia, can achieve at the ballot box next year. The only way that historically we've been able to transform anything in society is through struggle, through movement, De la Cruz says. Nothing that we have earned as working class people in society has been something that has been granted to us by the benevolence of the ruling class. Not voting rights, not access to the most basic human rights. De la Cruz is speaking to The Guardian in a coffee shop in Midtown Manhattan. It's cold outside, and she and Garcia, 38, are each wearing a keffiyeh, the scarf which has long been a symbol of support for Palestine, and has taken on even greater meaning amid the ongoing Israeli assault on Gaza following the October 7th attacks. Both women have been heavily involved in protests against Israel's actions and against the continuation of U.S. support for Israel over the past 2 months. De la Cruz says growing anger among the left with the Democratic Party over a range of issues has seen interest in the PSL grow. We have an understanding that we are on the side of justice, that we are on the side of people who are oppressed, who are colonized, who are exploited, De la Cruz says. But I think it also has to do with the fact that people are tired of the same thing, of broken promises. There's a sentiment of disillusion, of outrage and hopelessness. De la Cruz adds, so we've definitely seen an upsurge that has to do with the inability of the Democratic Party to keep up with their promises. The article goes on to talk about the popularity of Bernie Sanders and AOC. It continues here. The presence of newly prominent progressives in the House of Representatives represents hope for some, but De la Cruz says they won't affect change. There's always been progressive politicians, she says. That's not enough because we should not shortchange ourselves. As working class people, thinking that's like the be-all and end-all, because it's not. AOC and other progressives have shown no sign that they will sign on to De la Cruz's signature plan to seize 100 corporations, which would amount to the government gaining trillions of dollars in revenue and serve as the foundation for a total reorganization of the economy, PSL says. The U.S. remains the only Western country that does not provide free health care for its citizens, and that would be an immediate focus. The money would also be used to provide housing, improve education, and offer free childcare. We can decide, do we want to spend hundreds of billions of dollars for Raytheon to be stinking rich? Even with just the top 100, imagine what we could do, Garcia says. We should put them under public management so that we can have democratically elected people to manage those things, who are accountable to their constituencies. And we can decide, do we want to spend hundreds of billions of dollars for Raytheon, a defense manufacturer, to be stinking rich? Or do you want to improve the infrastructure of this crumbling country? A conversation about Elon Musk's Starlink satellite communications network swiftly turns to the deregulation of industry, then to the Federal Reserve Bank, finishing with a dissection of alleged corruption at the Supreme Court. Alleged? Okay. One thing that is clear is the uphill battle De La Cruz and Garcia face. The PSL has increased its share of the vote in each of the last 4 presidential elections. Despite the obstacles, De La Cruz predicted that her name would be on the ballot in 30 to 40 states in November, way above the 15 states Gloria La Riva, the 2020 PSL candidate, managed. But the share of the vote is almost irrelevant in the movement the PSL envisions. De La Cruz and Garcia are realistic that the kind of changes they want to see, abolishing the Senate, seizing billions of dollars from the richest Americans, hobbling the likes of Bezos and Musk's, aren't possible through presidential decrees alone. Will it happen through electoral politics? It has never happened through electoral politics, De La Cruz says. It's always necessitated mass movements. It's always necessitated political organizations outside of the two-party system. And that goes for any reform that we have won, whether it is abortion rights, whether it is the right for the LGBTQAI community to be able to have access to the most basic rights as people to live in a union, whether it is desegregation, whether it is the end of slavery. It necessitated mass movements to force the hand of reform, because these people will never give us anything willingly. It will necessitate millions and millions and millions of people in motion to transform society. Electoral politics won't do it alone. Something that has given the PSL hope is that the recent resurgence in industrial organizing in the U.S., which has seen labor unions win impressive contract settlements across the health industry, school districts, and car manufacturing, has demonstrated an energy and enthusiasm for systemic change. It takes different levels of participation and struggle. It takes different instruments being created. And by that, I mean organizations, unions, different forms of organized struggle, De La Cruz says. Later on, the article goes on to say, the current success of the far right, including Trump, is a result of the failure of bourgeois democracy, a failure of capitalism, De La Cruz says. It's the failure of neoliberalism and capitalist systems to provide for the majority of people. And not only that, they have constructed a narrative of the enemy, the other, that element of society that is dehumanized constantly, De La Cruz says. For time constraints, I've had to skip over huge portions of the article. Please go on to The Guardian and read it for yourself. The article goes on to say, our biggest obstacle is precisely what makes us who we are, which is the fact that we are working class people, that we are women of color, and it is a shame to say that in a society that claims to be a democracy, that claims to have freedom, that claims to have equity, that is an obstacle, De La Cruz says. Garcia adds, are there going to be haters and people who disrespect us because we're women? We've dealt with that all our lives. The anti-immigrant, anti-black, all that stuff. We've dealt with it our whole lives. We're not afraid of that. We're not intimidated by that. If anything, those experiences just connect us more to the millions of people across the globe who have experiences where capitalism is them and their families. And we have a responsibility to fight against it, to do everything that we can in our lifetime to change that.